I am your host, Mediocre Tutorials and Reviews, back in here with yet one more video, joined today by a very special returning guest, Gamal.
Absolutely. What up, man?
Hey, man, appreciate you for stopping by, man.
Yeah.
So if you guys are not familiar with Gamal, we did a real estate video. I want to say it was like 3 or so months ago.
Yeah.
That was a little bit of a time ago.
Yeah. Summertime.
Listen, man, so I had to get you back in here.
Yeah.
Okay, I did a video not too long ago. I think it was called something like "A Married Woman Answers What's the Point or the Benefits of Marriage."
Right.
Down in the description box, one comment that I consistently got over and over and over again was, "We need to hear a married man's perspective." You're married.
I'm married. Yeah, got the ring on.
You got the ring on. You know, you jumped over that broom,
Yeah,
right?
I did.
How long you been married?
We've been married 10 years. Actually, we had a 10-year anniversary this year.
Okay.
So we've been married.
Okay.
Yeah, just over 10 years, man.
10 years. So you a decade in the game.
Decade in the game.
So it's real. It's official. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's official, man.
You got some seedlings, right?
I got 3 kids.
You got 3.
So how this worked out, right? So she is my cousin's wife's cousin.
What?
Yeah. We're not related.
Yeah, it made me feel a little bit weird.
Yeah, let me clarify that.
Like what?
We're not related.
Got it.
So my cousin.
Your cousin's wife's
wife.
cousin.
Right.
Got it.
So we met at a barbecue. So back in New York, we lived in New York for about. I lived there for 15 years before I moved to Columbus.
Okay.
And backyard barbecue is a big thing in New York, as you know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we met there. We kind of dated on and off for a little while. She was fronting for a little bit, and she went back. I went back to my old life, and we reconnected several years later. And then we just kind of got together, and then since then, we just figured it was right time, right person, and we just got married. And then after we got married, when we went on our honeymoon, she realized she was pregnant on the way back.
Okay.
So we didn't get to do anything from all the things you want to do right after you get married. We didn't do any of that because we started raising kids right away.
Got it.
So
Got it.
10 years later, we got 3 9-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old.
Okay. Now a little bit more context, which I think will add additional value to the discussion. You're originally from Jamaica.
Yes, sir.
And you moved here, I think you said when you were 22.
Yep.
To New York, right? And then where's your wife from?
She's from Guyana.
Okay, so we got 2 Caribbean souls, right? And I think it's good context because
Yeah, she's from Guyana. She moved here when she's like 2.
so she's a New Yorker.
She's a New Yorker, but her parents are Guyanese,
which is
like hardcore, like.
Yeah, if they're hardcore, then
culturally, she grew up in a Caribbean household.
Yeah. So the culture is still very, very Caribbean. So I'd say, traditional values, traditional goals, a little bit different than what I see probably, or what we all see in the dating game from a Black African American woman perspective. So I just want to set that context real quick.
Yep.
All right. So you already know the question I'm getting ready to ask. Anything else to share for additional context before I get into that question? Or you just want to?
Yeah. No, we can just get into it, man.
Let's get into it. Okay. Because I want to know. I want to know from your perspective, right? I need an understanding, a better understanding of benefits.
Yeah.
Of marriage, and let me give you a little bit more context. And I'm saying this from the perspective of, come on, you know me. Right? We both do great things at the corporation that we work at.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We got decent livings for ourselves. I'm out here, dating, right? Free as a bird, free as I possibly can be. So, and I feel like there's some aspects of marriage which strips out a lot of
the freedom,
right? And if you find one who is not, it's one of the biggest life decisions that you can ultimately make, right? So, but I feel like if you don't find one that has your best interest in mind, it can strip away years off your life. Not only like from a financial perspective, but from stress, right? So So knowing in all of that, right? I want to hear like your particular benefits.
So I'm gonna make this easy. I got 3 benefits that I'd throw out there.
Okay.
For me personally, being married, right? And I think that goes across, just most married men. I think there's a financial component, there is a family component, and there is a life support component.
Okay.
I'm gonna break 3 down. So from a financial component, think about being single, right? You got your freedom, but what does it cost you to be out there roaming the street?
It depends how you do it. So I'd say like one of the things that I support and will always support on my channel is coffee dates over real dates.
Okay.
Right. Like when I say a real date, I don't even know why I said real date, because a coffee date is a real date. But I mean like these expensive, take them out to Roof Crisp, and then you look at the bill and you're like, and
that's one night. That's one night out of the weekend.
Right, and then you might do it again a second night with someone else different, right? So like I'm a fan of meet them for brunch or something like that, but at a coffee shop, right? Get in, 30-minute conversation. You can dead it right there, or if they're interesting, you can take it off a little bit further, and then that can transition into something else. But that initial is a $5 cost.
Right. So that's a filter. That's your filter mechanism. Right?
Absolutely.
So let's say you have a dozen of them filtered through the coffee filter, coffee date filter.
Yeah.
And then several of them or a few of them pass through the filter, and then you need to up the game to what's next.
Well, here's another thing is I don't up the game to anything.
Oh, you don't?
No, like it's usually just it goes from coffee to hey, you want to come over? No, for real. and then like, but think about it, because then at that point, like you skip. Like I haven't taken anyone out to eat. I can't remember the last time, bro. I can't, but I'm still extremely successful. So like from a financial perspective, it's not that expensive. I hear what you're saying though. I hear what you're saying though. It just depends how you do it. And I also think like, the city that we live in, it's not that expensive to do it here.
True.
And then where I live at, it's easy to travel. So there's really no like traveling expenses.
So that was a strategy in the acquisition of where you
Absolutely. Absolutely. And even think like the acquisition itself, like you already know, like I sit out here in the front, and as they walk by, as I see new ones, you know what I'm saying? Like my life is now structured around it being the most efficient from a financial perspective.
But I think the game changed maybe over the last, I guess, the time when I was out there dating. Because, moving from coffee to coming over, the type of women that would make that type of decision
to just come through.
I'm not going to tell them not to come through.
Right.
But will I see them again? I don't know.
That's true.
Right. So that's another component. I don't know if things are different now.
So you got out the game before Tinder was a thing.
Oh, absolutely.
You got out the game before Bumble was a thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like, do you even know what Bumble is?
I'm going back to Black Planet.
Oh! Black Planet! Black Planet! We got an old school in the house.
That's right, Black Planet, man.
Shit, I remember Black Planet.
And I think the new thing that was out back then was what's that dating thing called now? It's not before Tinder.
Before Tinder? It's social media?
No, it's not social media. It's a dating site. It's like
you mean not Tinder. Tinder, they're owned by, the company that owns Tinder is the same company that owns the company that you're talking about.
Yeah, but that was a new thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about,
right,
yeah. But you got to pay a subscription fee for the one that you're talking about, right?
Right.
All right, so financial.
So financial is one. So, being married, man, you don't have the expense of like, going out with different people every weekend, several times a week. So
to your point, it is more expensive. Like,
absolutely.
Yeah. But at the same time,
but that's just the dating aspect of it. There's the living situation. Right?
Yeah.
So instead of having 2 separate places, the cost of where you live is now cut in half. Because especially if you got 2 contributing members of the household,
right?
Whatever expenses you got across the board is just chopped down the middle.
Okay.
Right. And so from that aspect, you're also increasing how much you're able to save. every month. You know, again, assuming that you have the right type of partner. Right. So those are also factors you got to look at. But that's another piece of the financial piece. So there's a financial, then we talked about, I don't know if there's something else you want to touch on the financial piece.
Yeah. The one I was going to interject in there was children.
That's the family side.
Okay, so we're not talking about, you're right.
Well, so I talked about financial.
Yeah.
Then the second piece was having kids and having a family.
Well, but the financial, you have to consider the kids as well, because those are added expenses.
It is added expense, but what if you had a kid outside of wedlock?
It's true, yeah. So I can separate the kids from the marriage discussion, because you can be married and have no kids.
You can, but most people that are married have kids. Right. And that's one of the reasons people get married. Because they want a family.
In my opinion, it's one of the largest from a man's perspective, like the business case, the cost benefit analysis of getting married, like the goal of raising them in a 2-parent household. I think it could be better tied if you have 2 people doing that.
Yeah.
I think I'd argue with whether or not those 2 people need to have it ordained in front of the government in order to have it happen. But I think, so if we compare the financial, so it's just thinking about financial, and we'll go on a family real quick. Mm-hmm. So financial benefit of me going out, dating multiple times per week versus the lifestyle of combined income, if you have the right one.
Yeah.
But then also you got to subtract the expenses of children, because most married people are probably going to have kids at some point.
Right, but a lot of single people have kids at some point, and it costs them more money that way, because if you're in a single parent household, you know, you're the one shouldering all the burden versus 2 people. Or if you're a man and you don't have custody, you're paying child support, which I worked in the banking industry, and I saw how much that cost.
Yeah.
So, you know, so there's that too.
Yeah.
So if you're single and you have kids, it's still going to cost you more.
Yeah.
Because you're the only contributing part of that household.
No, that's a good point. You know, which is why I exponentially wrap it up. You know what I'm saying? 'Cause I don't want any. You know what I mean? Like it's you know, it can definitely be a burden. You know, I got some buddies that are going through situations with, you know, child support situation, and I mean it ain't fun. It's not fun, right? Mm-hmm. And I've seen everything from depression from them, you know, because now, and it's not so much as, I think there's a bit of depression because there's a change in their life from like, now I have something to take care of, but then it's also, you're tying yourself to this woman for a certain amount of time now. You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, you gotta put your best foot forward and understand the risk. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a whole lot we could talk about around that. But let's get into the family side of it, right?
Let's do it.
So one of the reasons I got married was because you know, I was a gigolo just like you are today. I mean, I did it. I was out there, and over time, it just, you know,
wasn't fun.
Yeah, it wasn't fun anymore. I mean, and it wasn't fun, but you know, there was something missing. There was something more. You know, every weekend, every other weekend, you know, you kind of moving around the city, and
you think there's an emptiness in that?
There is an emptiness in that. I mean, it lasts for the period of time it lasts for, and then if you're not mentally connected or emotionally connected with that person, then you know, after the physical transaction happens, then you know, it's time to move on, right? And then there's just something there. Over time, you get that feeling of just wanting more than just a physical transaction.
I feel you. You know, I completely understand this point right here, in a sense that, you know, I talk about on my channel, like, I think that some dudes are without a doubt built for those short-term transactions, and they'll be happy in doing that for the rest of their lives. And I feel like, you know, as you look at dating videos and stuff like that on the internet, you'll have dudes that, you know, out there that I believe, and I have friends in my life that I feel like they can do that and be happy until their death, right? But like, that's not everybody, right? And I see like examples of, you know, dudes on the internet that say you're not an alpha or you're not a man unless you can do that. And I think it's key to understand like what really is your base, right? Like do you really get fulfilled out of doing that? And I think like there's something to say, being able to conquer for that evening. There's something visceral about that. I think it goes back to our biology of being hunter-gatherers.
Yeah, and when you get married, that doesn't go away.
Yeah. So, but
feeling doesn't go away
because there's something special. Although I described like that adrenaline rush, right? Like of that win. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
That's just how
feels good,
I think
bro.
men are built. Like,
yeah.
Especially from us, being socialized that way.
Yeah.
How I grew up, you are saluted, based on
body count.
Yeah, body count.
Yeah.
Right? And that's essentially how we're socialized.
Yeah.
And so if you're socialized in a society that rewards that from your 5 years old all through adulthood,
mm-hmm.
putting on a ring and making a commitment doesn't make that go away.
Yeah.
Because that's how you grew up.
So how do you scratch that itch?
It's just staying out of the situations that put you in trouble is just one of the ways that I try to manage that.
So you just gotta ignore it.
You gotta ignore it. You gotta not put yourself in situations where you're gonna mess up.
There's nothing.
It's just hard to.
But there's nothing like that feeling at New. So
I'm good.
You're good.
I'm good.
So I when I think about like that feeling, that like, oh, you just got her number,
mm-hmm.
and that feeling of that new.
The conquest,
right? Like there's something like biologically driven in men to conquer.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like I feel like, when I was back in a relationship like 12, 13 years ago, like one of the things that I identified is that never went away, right? So like, mm-hmm. I don't know, it's just like, you just got to get to a point where you just ignore that visceral feeling.
So I'm going to ask you a question. When was the last relationship you had?
12, 13 years ago.
Why is that?
So 12, 13 years ago, I was in school, mm-hmm. and I had a situation with a young lady which led me to probably be in a state which I see now calling the internet red pill rage, right? I was angry at female nature. I was also angry at human nature, but I was angry at those things. And what I did for myself is I said, I need to focus on me. Because I was too into that situation. Mm-hmm. And I need to focus on me and build myself up to the best that I can possibly be.
Okay.
Before all of this red pill stuff on the internet was even like a thing, I decided that within myself. So I set certain goals, and within those goals, I wanted to be super selfish with me, my time, mm-hmm. How I was dedicating my time, mm-hmm. And I ended up, leaving school, graduating, getting a really good job, excelled at that really good job, went and got my MBA, excelled at that, got even better companies, better opportunities, more money. And all throughout that, I was slaying, right? So I was extremely happy. And it's just so crazy that dudes usually have to come to a situation like that to say, bump what Disney tells me, bump what other movies tell me. Mm-hmm. I need to focus on building myself up, right? And not being so focused on them. I think it's different for everybody.
When will that end? Well, and then when you get to that point, what's next? What do you do?
What you mean, like what's the next step?
Yeah.
I think there's components of the next step that you want to think about a legacy, mm-hmm. for sure, right? Like, but a legacy may not necessarily mean that you have kids. It could be part of your legacy. It could be. I know, and I've talked about this on the channel before. That's the one thing that gets me held up is children at some point, and I say that specific to I know the impact that my pops had on my life, mm-hmm. and I would want to at some point be able to kind of pass that knowledge down,
right,
in a way that makes sense. So I hear you, and honestly, when I hit like I want to say 31ish, mm-hmm. maybe even like a little bit before that, 30, I kept on questioning kind of what is the next step, because in my 20s I made these goals to hit by 30, and I hit all those goals ahead of time. So I will say there was a period of time where I had to reassess and understanding my purpose and what I'm doing and how I am contributing to society, which is why, like, you've seen me, all the hobbies that I go through, and now I found something good with photography.
Yep.
You know, I found something good with YouTube, and I love to do this stuff. You know what I'm saying? But I knew throughout that time, the more that I focused on women, either the less that I got of them, or the less focused on building up my kingdom that I would become. And we both know, the more that a man builds up his own kingdom, the more women that will be around.
Yeah, and you got a point. I mean, you know, women in relationships could be distracting. You know, when you're focused on doing stuff, because you know when you get into a relationship, one of the things that's demanded of you is time, right?
Yeah.
You know, so you're not spending enough time with me and all this other stuff, and so you know, you got to be careful of that. And I went through that period too. You know, I didn't get married until I got through some of the milestones I wanted to get through, and I was just, you know, slaying the same way, you know, and doing my thing and working on me. But there comes a time where, and it's different for everybody. And it's also different based on the goals and the things that you want to do. Not everyone's going to get married, right? It ain't for everybody. And then we could talk, I don't know if this is a separate channel, a separate topic, but once you get married, there's a whole slew of things that go on that, you know, people need to know about. But, you know, it just depends on what your goal is. And, you know, ultimately, if you're looking to talk about legacy, if you're looking to talk about having kids, the institution of marriage is probably in my eyes anyway, the best way to go to do that. There are other ways you can do that, but for me, it's not just what society says or society kind of demands or dictates. It just worked for me.
Got it. All right, so we went through financial, we went through family, legacy. What was the third one again?
Third one was life support.
Okay.
And so, you know, you always hear the saying, behind every good man is a good supportive woman.
That's just a saying. I feel like, I don't know, is that true?
Well, I think it's true. It's absolutely true, because I think, well, for me anyway, and everybody's experience is different.
Yeah.
For me, everything that I've wanted to do post marriage, my wife has been there supporting me 100%. When I got an offer to come to Columbus from New York, we have no family here, right? You know, all her friends, all her family, everything she knows is in New York. And for me to come, and she actually just changed a job 4 months in when I came home and said, hey, I got an offer to this place in Columbus. And she's like, you know, hey, if this is what you want to do, you know, I'll support you.
Wow.
And so, you know, having somebody to support you, and that's just one example.
No, can we stay there for you know, because I want to be able to give that one its just due.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that one right there, like, this whole support thing, and I think like, so when I define a unicorn, one of the things that I feel like, you know, if a man is looking for a unicorn, like, what does that mean, right? And you feel like a unicorn is probably someone that you can eventually be in a long-term relationship with or get married if marriage is your thing, right? Like, one of the things is a woman being able to support you when the times are bad, just as well as she's done when the times are good. How did you know going into the marriage that you had a unicorn? Because she supported you when you wasn't sure what the next step was going, you know, how well the next step was going to be. And you had kids, you know, you had a family to provide for, but she trusted, she moved away from where she grew up from.
Yeah. Going into the marriage, I didn't know she was a unicorn in the sense of support. You know, the reason I got married to her, because our relationship was just different than any other one that I've ever had. I don't know if I was just exposed to different types of women. Yeah. And, you know, when we got connected, it was just different. It was a different feeling. It was just, you know, her goals were aligned to mine. You know, we just had a lot of things in common. And so, you know, I didn't necessarily know if she was a unicorn from the support aspect. I didn't know that she would support me if a decision like that came up. But it's just something that evolves over time, and yeah, so.
Yeah. So that's actually an interesting answer, because I would think that you would have known that she was that level of unicorn before.
I don't know if you can know that, because they're just like.
So you're still rolling the die. Like, if there's no way to know.
You're still rolling the die, because you don't really know someone until you're deep in. There are people that are married for 15, 20 years and still don't 100% know their partner. You know, because we are, as humans, we're just unique in terms of who we are. We're continuously evolving. We're changing over time. And so, and one of the problems with marriage is that some people, especially if they get married too early, as they evolve as individuals, they start to kind of move in different directions and they become different people. And so, whereas when they got married, they were compatible, as they start to work on themselves and they start to evolve and mature, they are not aligned anymore.
Right.
And so it just doesn't work over time. And that's a whole nother conversation. But I don't think you can know 100% going in everything about a person before you get married to them.
But doesn't that...
There's some fundamental things, there's some fundamental check boxes that you are red flags you got to make sure aren't there.
Right.
And once those things, because you're not going to get 100%, you're not going to get 100%.
Right.
Period. That unicorn that's out, I don't think it exists anyway.
That's real. That's
it
real.
Doesn't exist.
So yeah, and I guess a unicorn is also described as someone who's your 100% match.
I don't think that exists.
That's real.
Anybody saying that, I think
it's BS.
I think it's yeah.
Yeah. So let me go back to that example for a second. Let's say you had the opportunity to move to Columbus.
Yeah.
But you aren't married. Right? You could just go.
Yeah.
Without the risk. So I think in your case it worked out because you had someone that's willing to support when the times is good, when the times is bad, when the times is risky, when the times is not risky, right? But like this is what I think about when you think about like the cost benefit of anything that you do. You have to consider the risk as well. What if you were married and she didn't want to go, right? Like, but you're locking yourself into a way of living where every decision going into the future, you have to consider with another human being. And like you said, there's no unicorn, and people can be people. And you can never 100% know what they're going to choose, right? So like, it sounds like it worked out. Like it's working out, 10 years married, working out. But like, if I look at the divorce rate, right? Like it's at 50%.
Yeah.
70% of those are usually initiated by women.
Right.
So that's like, 50% of, we about to go skydiving, we about to go bungee jumping. 50% of the people that do that are going to die. You most likely will not take that risk. And I think a component of the 50% that end up getting divorced is those that may come across life decisions just like yours, but are unwilling to conform, right, to a change or a decision like that. So knowing all of that, knowing the perspective of me, of like someone who's not married, what would you say to that, right? Because the risk is real.
The risk is real, but I think ultimately, if you decide to get married, there's a level of selflessness that you need to have. When you get married, it's not just about you anymore, right? And you have to be able to pick a partner where you're compatible enough with, where you're okay giving up some of what you want to compromise some of the things that they want, right? And so, you brought up an example about me moving to Columbus, or anyone moving anywhere based on an opportunity that came up. If you weren't married, but you were in a relationship, that you were pretty tight with that person with, right? You didn't necessarily have, you still had a decision to make if that person didn't want to move. Would it be easier? Yes, because you're not married to them per se, and you can easily cut ties. But from a emotional standpoint, if you're really into that person, then you're gonna have to make that choice and that decision. So there's still a decision you got to make. If you have kids, it's not going to be that easy for you to just get up and move halfway across the country. So I think you got to consider other people when you're kind of making some of these decisions, because if you're not married and you have kids and you live in the same state and you're not together with your child's mom, you're still going to have to consider what the impacts of you moving away is going to be. And so it's not just easy for you to just get up and move. You can, but how is that going to impact the kid's life? How is that going to impact your life, right? And so so there's that complexity too if you're not married. If you are, at least you can have a conversation, a dialogue with someone that you're on the same page with, hopefully, and then you can talk about whether or not it makes sense for the family to move versus you're not together with the child's mom. You going, she just doesn't necessarily care about you leaving. Like, just make sure you send a check every month, right? So I think marriage kind of has to be something that you want to do, and I think it's not for everybody.
Right. Well, so what I hear is, so in that particular example, it sounds like in comparison of the lifestyles of being married versus being in a relationship with kids, right? But if we compare the lifestyles of being married with kids versus single and no kids, and you get a job offer across the country, I mean, you can just kind of go unabated. But I guess then you lose out on, if your goal in life is building that legacy, right? If kids is part of your legacy, you kind of lose out on being able to do that as well. So it sounds like with both lifestyles, there's kind of a consideration. Yeah, there's trade-offs between them all, and that's what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, and you could build you could build yourself up and wait until you're in your mid-40s to have kids, but there are trade-offs to that as well. Like, you probably won't have the energy as you did, younger, raising kids, because it's a lot of energy, right? And so being 50 and have a 5-year-old, or being 55 and have a 10-year-old, 60 have a 15-year-old, like, there's a trade-off. Versus you can't move it around as much. You're not in tune with them as much because the generational gaps are so wide, right? And versus being closer, being younger, having kids, and kind of being able to have the energy to move around with them, being able to relate to them a little bit better. So this is trade-offs, man. So, yeah.
Cool, man. All right, so we went through the top 3 reasons or the benefits of marriage from a man's perspective. Any final thoughts, man? Anything else to share? Anything else to leave the viewers? Because most of the people who follow this channel is like, no wife ever, right? So
my question would be, no wife ever, right? And again, it ain't for everybody. What's the end game? And I'd ask you that question.
Well, here I consider, like, what's my man's name? Hugh Hef. R.I.P. to the king. Dan Blazarian. Those lifestyles still exist. Yeah. Right? Like, build up my wealth astronomically, and then have those. Remember we were talking about before, like those more hunter-gatherer kind of urges to find the new, slay the new, move on to the next. You can get to still scratch that itch, and I think like. Again, my legacy might be that I have my name on the side of a building. It may not be kids. So I think like the what's next is really determined upon what like truly, and not what media tells you what happiness is, but what truly makes you happy.
And that's individual.
It's individual. And and that's part of my message is that like you can't take a cookie cutter path. Whether or not that cookie cutter path is what Disney told you, or whether that cookie cutter path is what a dating coach who slays all day tells you. You know what I'm saying? It's just, you have to look deep down within and figure out what is it for you. You know what I'm saying? So,
but hold on a second. And I know our time is almost there, but if you fast forward to, maybe 25 years in the future, right? You're 30 now, 31 now-ish?
34.
34, my bad. So another 20, 30 years. Do you still see yourself hunter-gathering?
Listen, as long as my hairline is respectable, as long as this and check the link in the description. I'm gonna have a link down there how I regrew my hairline back. You know what I mean? As long as it's just from men gel is a thing. I mean, it's a consideration, bro, because like listen, I'm 34. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can dip down into the early 20s right now if I put on a fitted and walk around here.
But the purpose that you feel in life or your purpose in life might change over time. Like the way
true.
you felt when you were 15, 20 is different than the way you feel now.
Look, yeah, but if I had an older face, so the thing is, I would have to consider life a little bit differently depending upon what really makes me happy. But I feel like I have extra time to consider because I look younger. I'm aging well, right? Like my hairline's still here. I can, I'm still King Slayer. You know what I'm saying? Like so like I got all these things on my side, so I feel like it's extended. But to answer your question, I don't know. 25 years from now, I have to define it in 5 years, and then 5 years later I have to define it in 5 years after that. Like I feel like because I'm constantly changing and shifting and trying to still understand who I am and what's really making the journey pleasurable. Like it's still things that I have to do, but I do see a lot of people on the flip side. When I say flip side, the married side, that hate their situation, and it's so much of them, right? Like we went over the statistics, 50% divorced, right? And that's even considering same-sex couples, right? Like if you throw that in there, they have the same rates of divorce, right? So and then most of those. I think that's a whole nother video. That's a whole nother video. Yeah. But like, in considering, and of the 50 that are still married, how many are actually happy? Right? So like, in hearing all that, it's just like, I don't know if that's the, it might be long-term relationship with promise rings. You know what I'm saying? And my pop's doing that right now. Salute to the king. My pops is doing that right now. My pops was married, so my mom got divorced, is never gonna do that again. And now, he's just chilling. And she's like my second mom, and it's just understood that, marriage will probably never happen. And walk around with promise rings. You know what I'm saying? And he's gonna live happily ever after. You know what I mean?
All right, man. Well, to each his own.
To each his own. But bro, listen.
To each his own.
I appreciate the conversation, my
Absolutely,
G.
Man.
I feel like I love it because we get the opportunity to really bubble up conversations that, you know what I'm saying? Like how often do you get to talk to, you know what I'm saying, your single friends about, the benefits of marriage, you know what I'm saying? But being able to do it in a way that's clear and consistent and provides additional clarity for folks that are trying to help figure themselves out. So
sure.
So I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, man.
Listen, man, if you still got time, I think we should do a reaction video here in a second.
All right.
You know what I mean?
Let's do it, man.
So let's do it. Questions, comments, concerns, leave them down in the description box down below. Mediocre tutorials and reviews at gmail.com. Kamal, again, thank you for your time, bro.
All right.
Till next time, YouTube.